Snow fell thick beyond the glass walls of the Aspen Estate garage. Victoria Hale dropped $100 bill onto frozen concrete. "Pick it up," she said, her voice cut sharp through winter air. "It's worth more than you are." Ethan Cole didn't bend. The single father stood still, his daughter Lily clutching his worn jacket. Her eyes tracked the vintage supercar sitting dead in the center of the space, tens of millions in metal and history that wouldn't start. Victoria laughed. The sound echoed off polished stone. "Start it and I'll marry you." 10 seconds later, winter thunder cracked the sky. No one laughed anymore. The mansion clung to the mountainside like ice to glass. Victoria Hale owned 3 floors of engineered luxury heated floors that never felt cold. Invisible speakers that filled rooms with perfect silence until she wanted sound, windows that cost more per square foot than most people's homes. Each pane was custom fabricated, resistant to impact and temperature. The whole structure was a statement of control. She'd made her fortune in aerospace contracts. Government secrets turned into private wealth. Satellite communications. Guidance systems. The kind of technology that made or broke military operations. Her company employed 300 people across 4 facilities. She knew every contract number, every deadline, every point of failure. Ethan Cole maintained the grounds. He'd been doing it for 18 months, long enough to learn the rhythms of the estate, short enough that staff barely knew his name. He trimmed hedges in summer, cleared snow in winter, repaired equipment when it broke, kept his head down year-round. His truck was 15 years old, rust showing through paint on the wheel wells. His tools were older, inherited from a father who'd worked with his hands until arthritis made that impossible. His daughter rode with him every morning before school because childcare cost more than he could spare. He'd tried various arrangements, neighbors, after-school programs, a babysitter he couldn't really afford. Nothing worked. Lily was quiet, particular, uncomfortable with most adults, so she came with him, did homework in the truck, read her library books while he worked. Today was supposed to be routine. Clear the drive, check the generator, maybe replace the air filters in the guest house HVAC system if he had time. Leave before Victoria returned from whatever meeting kept her in the city. Simple. Anonymous. But Victoria's prized possession sat disabled in the garage, a 1962 racing prototype, one of 7 ever built. The kind of car museums fought over. Collectors mortgaged estates to acquire. This particular chassis had raced at Le Mans, finished 3rd despite brake failure on the Mulsanne Straight. It had history, it had value, and for 8 days it had refused to start. 6 international specialists had flown in over the past week, engineers from Stuttgart who'd worked on the original factory team. A restoration expert from Milan whose reputation was legendary, he'd rebuilt crashed race cars into concours winners. An electronics consultant from Tokyo who specialized in vintage ignition systems. Each had run diagnostics, checked systems, found nothing wrong. Each had failed. The garage was their workshop. Now, equipment cases stacked against walls, diagnostic computers showing perfect readings, tools scattered across workbenches. The car sat in the center under bright LED lighting, every panel perfect, chrome gleaming, but dead. Mrs. Hale. The German engineer stood by his equipment cases, defeat in every line of his posture. The ignition system is factory correct. Fuel delivery is perfect. Compression is exactly to specification. But it will not fire. Victoria's heels clicked across polished concrete. Then you're all useless. Get out. Ethan was finishing his work when she spotted him. He'd cleared the main path, started on the guest house. Lily sat in the truck cab, reading a library book about machines. You. Victoria's voice carried like a whip crack. Groundskeeper. He turned. She stood at the garage entrance, silhouetted against interior light. Come here. Bring your child. Something in her tone made his jaw tighten, but he needed this job. He gestured to Lily. She climbed down, her breath misting in cold air. Inside, the garage was warmer, heated floors. The vintage car sat in the center like an altarpiece, curves and chrome, history made tangible. The failed specialists gathered their equipment in silence. 6 experts, Victoria said. Her eyes were cold, millions in fees, and this piece of junk won't start. She looked at Ethan. You work with machinery, don't you? Lawnmowers, snowblowers. He said nothing. She pulled a bill from her pocket. I'll pay you $100 to try. Entertainment value. Let's see if manual labor can accomplish what education couldn't. She dropped it. The bill fell flat against concrete. Lily's hand found her father's. She was 8, old enough to understand contempt. Victoria smiled. Pick it up. It's worth more than you are. One of the specialists, the Italian, shifted uncomfortably. The others watched in silence. Ethan looked at the car, then at his daughter, then at Victoria. I don't need your money. Her laugh was sharp. Of course you don't. People like you never do until rent comes due. She walked to the car, ran a manicured hand over its hood. This is worth more than you'll earn in 10 lifetimes. These men, she gestured at the specialists, are worth more in an hour than you make in a month. She turned back. But you know what? I'm bored and angry. So here's my offer. Victoria crossed her arms. Snow fell heavier outside. Start this car, her voice dropped to mock sweetness, and I'll marry you. The German specialist made a sound that might have been protest. The Italian looked away. The others stood frozen. Lily's grip tightened on her father's hand. Ethan Cole had been invisible for 7 years. Once, he'd been someone else. MIT graduate, class of 2010. Defense contractor by 2012. The kind of engineer who solved problems governments couldn't admit existed. He designed guidance systems for missiles that could adjust mid-flight for atmospheric interference. Worked on projects with clearances so high they didn't have names, just alphanumeric designations that changed every 6 months. He'd been good at it, better than good. His colleagues called him the wizard, the engineer who could look at a system everyone else said was impossible and find the solution nobody else saw. He'd worked 80-hour weeks, traveled to test sites across 3 continents, briefed generals and senators on classified capabilities. Sarah had understood. She'd been a mathematician, working on encryption algorithms for the NSA. They'd met at a security clearance briefing, bonded over the absurdity of their jobs, building weapons systems and security infrastructure while living normal lives. She'd made him laugh, made him see beyond specifications and test parameters. They'd married in a courthouse ceremony because neither of them had time for a real wedding. Lily was born a year later. Premature. Small. But Sarah had held her and said she was perfect, and she was right. Then Sarah died. Brain aneurysm. Sudden. Clinical. The doctors used words like catastrophic and unsurvivable, and nothing you could have done. He'd built systems that could track a missile through atmosphere, but he couldn't save his wife from her own biology. Lily was 1 year old. He'd left everything. The career. The clearances. The colleagues who tried to help. He'd taken his daughter and driven until the landscape changed from concrete to trees, found a small town, a small cabin, work that didn't require thinking. The cabin was wood and glass, tucked into forest that smelled like pine and silence. Mornings meant toast and eggs, Lily's backpack by the door, frost on the truck windshield. He'd drive her to school, a 20-minute route through mountains, then spend his day with lawn equipment and hedge trimmers and tasks that ended when the sun set. At night, they read books about machines, because those were Lily's favorites. She liked understanding how things worked, gears and levers, and the logic of motion. She asked questions he answered carefully, stripping complexity down to truth. She didn't talk much at school. Teachers mentioned it at conferences. Withdrawn, they said. Prefers books to other children. They suggested specialists. He nodded and changed nothing. He understood withdrawal. It was safe. It was simple. But Lily wasn't withdrawn around machines. She'd sit in the truck while he worked, watching engines run. Her focus went absolute, the same intensity he recognized from his own work years ago. She heard patterns in mechanical noise most people missed. "Dad." Once, she'd pointed at a client's generator. "That sounds wrong." He'd listened. Found a loose mounting bolt causing vibration that would have led to failure. The owner had been grateful. Ethan had said nothing about his daughter's ear. She had Sarah's eyes, her mother's focus, her mother's gift for seeing what others missed. He'd built his life around keeping her safe. Safe meant simple. Safe meant anonymous. Safe meant accepting whatever work came, however small, however invisible it made him. Standing in Victoria Hale's garage, her mockery hanging in warm air, that safety felt fragile. Lily stood very still. Her coat was too thin for real winter. He'd meant to buy her a new one, but the old truck needed tires more urgently. She wore mittens Sarah had knitted before she got sick, purple yarn with white snowflakes. Her library book was tucked under one arm. The specialists were packing. Victoria waited, arms crossed. Snow fell heavier outside, accumulating on the driveway he'd cleared 2 hours ago. Then Lily moved. Not toward her father. Toward the car. Her steps were deliberate, measured. The way she moved when she was listening to something nobody else could hear. "Don't touch that," Victoria started. Lily stopped an arm's length away. She tilted her head. "It's crying," she said. The German specialist paused. The Japanese consultant looked up. Victoria laughed. "Crying. The child thinks the car has feelings." She looked at Ethan. "Is this what you teach her? Fairy tales about machines?" Ethan moved to his daughter. "Lily, something's hurting it, Dad." Her voice was quiet but certain, like that generator. "The sound is wrong." The Italian specialist came closer. "What sound, little one?" "The engine is off." Lily shook her head. "Not that sound. The other one. The high one that hurts." Victoria's patience snapped. "Get out. Both of you. This is ridiculous. Wait." The German engineer held up a hand. He looked at Lily. "You hear a high frequency?" She nodded. He pulled something from his equipment case, a handheld spectrum analyzer, professional grade. The kind of tool that cost $15,000 and could detect electromagnetic radiation from millihertz to gigahertz. He switched it on, adjusted settings. The display lit up with frequency bands. He moved it methodically near the car, starting at the front, working toward the cockpit. The display spiked. A clean, sharp peak at exactly 28 kilohertz. Strong, consistent, unnatural, electromagnetic interference. His voice changed. Professional, focused. The accent, German, Ethan noted, became less pronounced. 28 kilohertz. Constant amplitude. Phase-locked. I did not check for this. Why would I? The car is mechanical. 1962. No electronics except the magneto ignition. The Japanese consultant moved quickly, his own equipment coming out a different analyzer, more sophisticated. He scanned, his fingers dancing across the touchscreen interface. Data cascaded down the display. He nodded, his expression serious. Confirmed. Strong signal. Very clean. Too clean for natural interference. This is artificial. Generated. The Italian specialist had stopped packing. Show me the frequency response. He looked at the data, his experienced eyes catching details. Madonna. This is precisely targeted. 28 kilohertz right in the operational band for magneto-ignition spark generation. Someone designed this to disable the car specifically. Victoria stepped forward. What are you talking about? The German looked up. Your car is being jammed. Someone does not want it to start. Ethan knelt beside Lily. Where does the sound come from? She pointed. Inside. Not the engine. Behind it. He looked at Victoria. She stared back. For the first time, uncertainty cracked her composure. Who has access to this garage? Ethan asked. No one. Just me. And Victoria stopped. Her jaw tightened. The security installation team. 2 weeks ago, Ethan stood. He'd spent 7 years burying what he was. 7 years pretending that the part of his brain that could see patterns others missed didn't exist anymore. 7 years choosing simple over complex, anonymous over recognized, safe over challenging. But some things you can't bury deep enough. Some things survive every layer of dirt and snow and time you pile on top of them. Lily's hand was still in his. He could feel her pulse through the thin mittens. Steady, calm. She trusted him. Always had. Even when he'd uprooted her life, moved them to a place where nobody knew them, taken work that paid a fraction of what he used to earn. She'd never questioned it, never asked why they lived the way they did. He looked at Victoria, at the specialists, at the car, at the problem. Mrs. Hale, do you have the security system documentation? She blinked. What? The specifications, installation plans, equipment list. Something in his tone made her move. Not the imperious command she'd used before. This was different. Recognition. She pulled a tablet from a wall dock top of the line. Probably cost more than his truck. She navigated through files with practiced gestures, found what she needed, handed it over without comment. Ethan scrolled through the PDF. His eyes tracked text faster than most people read a skill from the defense work, when you needed to absorb technical specifications under deadline pressure. The specialists gathered around, reading over his shoulder. Documentation for cameras, motion sensors, glass break detectors, standard luxury security suite, but then, buried on page 17 of 23, a line item that made him stop. Vehicular GPS tracking module with remote activation. Model GT2840. Frequency 28.2 kHz. Installation concealed hardwired to primary power system. The number registered immediately. 28.2 kHz. Close enough to the detected interference to be the source. The signal would drift slightly temperature variations, component tolerances, but the match was too precise to be coincidental. The Italian leaned in. Madre di Dio, they installed a tracker. On my car? Victoria's voice went cold. Without my explicit consent? Ethan kept reading. GPS modules use radio frequency transmission. If improperly shielded or if there's a design flaw, they create electromagnetic interference, the German finished. In an old car with magneto-ignition, this would prevent spark generation. The timing would be catastrophically disrupted. The Japanese consultant was already moving. Where would they mount it? Not visible. Good power supply. Access to frame ground. Behind the firewall, Ethan said, near the wiring harness. All 3 specialists looked at him. Victoria studied him. You're not a groundskeeper. He didn't answer. The German was already opening a tool case. We need to remove the device. Can you help us access? No. Ethan shook his head. Removing it could trigger anti-theft features. The security company probably has remote monitoring. They'd know immediately. The Italian frowned. Then what do we do? Ethan looked at the car. At Lily. At the snow falling heavier outside. We shield it, he said. Victoria stared. Shield it. With what? Do you have aluminum foil? Silence. The kind that fills rooms when someone says something so unexpected that brains need time to process. The German specialist's mouth opened slightly. The Italian blinked. The Japanese consultant tilted his head, calculating. Then the Japanese consultant laughed. Short, surprised, delighted. Faraday cage. Brilliant, simple, elegant. Use conductive material to create electromagnetic shielding around the interference source. Basic physics. We've been thinking too complex, replacing components, redesigning systems when the solution is literally kitchen materials. The German nodded slowly, understanding dawning. Aluminum is an excellent conductor. Multiple layers would create a barrier to radio frequency emission, block the 28 kHz signal from reaching the magneto-ignition. The timing would stabilize. Spark generation would resume. Victoria's eyes narrowed. You want to fix a $10 million car with kitchen supplies? No. Ethan kept his voice level. I want to temporarily block electromagnetic interference so the ignition system can function. The foil creates a conductive barrier. Basic physics. The German nodded slowly. It might work. If we can access the device location and wrap it properly, and you need what else? Victoria's tone was sharp. Paper clips? Chewing gum? A screwdriver set? Electrical tape? A flashlight? She stood very still. Outside, thunder rolled. Winter thunder rare, violent. Lily tugged her father's sleeve. It's going to work, Dad. How do you know? Victoria snapped. The child looked at her steadily. Because he listens. Like me. Something crossed Victoria's face. Not quite anger. Not quite curiosity. She walked to an intercom panel. Pressed a button. Kitchen. Bring aluminum foil. And find tools, screwdrivers, tape, flashlight. Now, 5 minutes later, a staff member arrived with supplies. Victoria dismissed them with a gesture. She turned back to Ethan. Show me, she said. Ethan worked methodically. The way he'd worked 7 years ago on guidance systems, where a single miscalculation meant mission failure. The specialists helped the German removing interior panels with surgeon's precision, the Italian holding the flashlight at exact angles, the Japanese consultant monitoring readings as each step progressed. They'd moved from skeptics to colleagues in the span of an hour. The firewall access was tight, designed for factory assembly, not field service. Ethan's hands navigated by feel as much as sight, finding mounting bolts, tracing wire harnesses, locating the GPS unit exactly where he'd predicted. A small black box with antenna leads, military-grade construction, mounted to steal power from the car's electrical system. Clever installation, professional, but flawed in its implementation. He tore foil into sheets, not random, calculated dimensions. Each sheet was roughly 12 inches square. He folded them carefully, creating multiple layers with air gaps between. The air was crucial. Electromagnetic shielding worked best with discontinuous barriers, like composite armor on tanks. The principle was the same. He wrapped the GPS unit without disconnecting it. That was critical. Disconnecting would trigger tamper alerts. The security company would know immediately. Police might be called. Victoria would face questions about why her security system was being dismantled. This way, the device stayed active. It just couldn't transmit effectively. And more importantly, its emissions couldn't escape to interfere with the car's ignition. EMI dropping. The consultant reported. 20%, 40, 60. Ethan added another layer, secured it. The work was precise. His hands didn't shake. 80%, 90. He replaced the panels, tightened screws, stood back. Victoria watched. And now you try to start it. Lily moved beside him. Snow fell. Thunder waited. Victoria slid into the driver's seat. Chrome and leather, history and engineering. Her hands found the wheel. The specialists stood back. Ethan held Lily's hand. She turned the key. Silence. The same silence that had haunted this garage for a week. The same dead metal. The same failed promise. Then a catch. A cough. The magneto, spinning, magnetic field building, spark jumping gaps it hadn't found in 8 days of expert diagnosis. The sound was rough at first, hesitant, like the car itself couldn't believe it was waking. Then confidence. Then power. The engine roared to life. Not the smooth purr of modern engineering. Not the computer-controlled precision of fuel injection and electronic timing. This was raw mechanical symphony. 60 years of racing heritage compressed into sound that shook air and ground, and everyone standing in the garage. Exhausts crackled with unburned fuel finding oxygen. Carburetors balanced as fuel flow stabilized. The whole car seemed to settle into itself, finding equilibrium after days of forced silence. It lived, it breathed, it sang. At that exact moment, as if the universe itself was paying attention, thunder split the winter sky. Winter thunder, rare and violent, the kind that makes people look up and remember that nature doesn't follow human schedules. It rolled across the mountain valley, deep and resonant, nature answering the call of restored metal. The specialists erupted. The German shouted something in his language. The Italian crossed himself. The Japanese consultant just smiled, his equipment showing clean readings. Lily looked up at her father. The car is happy now. Victoria sat frozen. The wheel vibrated under her palms. The engine rumbled. She stared through the windshield at falling snow. Her reflection ghosted in glass. She shut it off. The silence afterward felt different. Not empty. Waiting. She climbed out, walked to where Ethan stood. Her heels clicked, stopped. "Who are you?" He said nothing. No groundskeeper analyzes RF interference and improvises Faraday shielding. So, who are you? Someone who wants to be left alone. Victoria's jaw tightened. You made me look foolish. No, you did that yourself. The German specialist cleared his throat. Mrs. Hale, if I may, this man has saved you from a serious security breach. The GPS device was unauthorized, possibly for surveillance or theft. You should contact your security company immediately. She didn't look away from Ethan. I'll handle that. Her voice dropped. What do you want? Nothing. Everyone wants something. He pointed at the $100 bill still lying on concrete. Pick that up. She blinked. What? You dropped it. Pick it up. That's what I want. The garage went still. Even the specialists stopped moving. Outside, snow fell heavier. Victoria stared at him. Then at the money. Then back. She walked to it, bent. Her fingers touched cold concrete. She picked up the bill, straightened, held it. Ethan took Lily's hand. They were at the door when Victoria spoke. Wait. Victoria held the money. Who are you? Really? Ethan paused. Lily looked up at him. Someone who used to solve problems. His voice was quiet. Before I learned that some problems can't be solved, the Italian specialist had been watching carefully. Recognition lit his face. Cole. Ethan Cole. Defense contractor. MIT. You published work on guidance system stabilization. I read your papers. Ethan's jaw tightened. Victoria moved closer. You're a defense engineer, and you're working as my groundskeeper. Was, past tense. Why? He looked at Lily. Because the work couldn't save what mattered. The German spoke softly. I understand. My wife cancer. 5 years ago. I threw myself into work. It helped nothing. Victoria studied Ethan, really looked at him, maybe for the first time. She saw the careful distance he maintained, the way he positioned himself between the world and his daughter. The practiced invisibility. I lost my father when I was 9, she said. Her voice had changed, quieter. Corporate jet crash, mechanical failure. The investigators said someone missed an inspection, just forgot to check something. Lily's hand tightened on her father's. I built this empire, Victoria gestured at the mansion beyond the garage because I never wanted to depend on someone else's competence again. I wanted control. Total control. How's that working? Ethan asked. She laughed. Sharp. Real. I couldn't start my own car. Thunder rolled again. Softer now. The storm moving on. I need to make calls, Victoria said. The security company, legal. This GPS situation is. She stopped, looked at the specialists. Thank you, all of you. I'll ensure your fees reflect the actual solution. She turned to Ethan. And you. I owe you more than picking up money. You don't owe me anything. I humiliated you. Lily spoke up. You were scared. Everyone looked at her. Your car was broken, the child continued. And nobody could fix it. That's scary. When things break and you can't fix them, Victoria crouched down, her expensive suit pooled on concrete. You're a very smart little girl. I listen to machines. Dad listens to everything. What am I saying right now? Victoria asked softly. Lily tilted her head. That you're sorry. But you don't know how to say it. Victoria stood. Her eyes were bright. She looked at Ethan. I'm sorry. He nodded once. But I still need your help, she said. Ethan shook his head. I don't. Not with the car. With something bigger. Victoria pulled out her phone, scrolled. Showed him a screen full of data. My company has a satellite communications array. Military contract. It's been experiencing intermittent failures for 3 weeks. Every expert we've consulted says the hardware is perfect. The Japanese consultant looked over. Signal degradation? Worse. Complete dropout. 30-second intervals. Random timing. We've replaced transceivers, checked every connection, run diagnostics until my engineers are sleeping in the lab. Ethan started to turn away. I can't help you. The contract is worth $200 million. If we can't solve this in 10 days, we lose it. 300 employees lose their jobs. Some of them are single parents. She paused. Like you. He stopped. I'm not asking you to come back to that life, Victoria said. Just look at the data. 1 hour. That's all. Lily tugged his hand. Dad. The crying sound. Remember? The German specialist had pulled out his own tablet. Mrs. Hale, would you allow us to see the diagnostic logs? Perhaps fresh eyes. She sent the files. 3 specialists crowded around screens. Ethan stood apart, Lily beside him. The Italian muttered something. The German zoomed in on a graph. The Japanese consultant shook his head. Nothing obvious, the German said. Signal quality is excellent during normal operation. Then, sudden complete failure. No degradation pattern. No predictive indicators. May I? Ethan heard himself say. Victoria handed him her phone. He scrolled through data. Failure logs spanning 3 weeks. Signal waveforms showing perfect quality until sudden dropout. Timestamp correlations across multiple ground stations. Environmental data, solar activity, atmospheric conditions, orbital parameters. His mind shifted into patterns he'd thought were buried. The kind of thinking that had made him valuable to defense contractors. Systems-level analysis. Finding connections nobody else saw because they were looking at individual components instead of the whole. The data was extensive, hundreds of log entries, but patterns emerged. The dropouts weren't evenly distributed across the day. They clustered. Certain orbital positions, certain geographic zones. The engineers had called it random because they weren't looking at the right variables. The intervals aren't random, he said after a minute. The specialists looked up. Yes, they are, the Italian said. We ran statistical analysis. They're not random. They're orbital. Ethan zoomed in on a specific sequence. Look at the dropout timing. 30 seconds. Then nothing for varying intervals. But if you map those intervals against satellite position relative to Earth's magnetic field, the Japanese consultant grabbed the phone. His fingers flew. South Atlantic anomaly. The Van Allen belt dip. Increased radiation flux. But we designed for that, Victoria said. For the transceivers, yes. Ethan handed the phone back. But what about the timing crystals? Those are smaller, harder to shield, and if they're experiencing single-event upsets from radiation, the timing would drift, the German finished. Just enough to lose synchronization. For exactly 30 seconds. Until automatic correction kicks in. Silence. Victoria stared at Ethan. You figured that out in 1 minute. I used to do this for a living. Will you consult? Name your price. He looked at Lily. She was reading patterns in the data on Victoria's screen, her small face focused. So much of her mother in her. I don't want money, he said. But if you're serious about fixing the problem, really fixing it, then yes, I'll help. What do you want? Flexible hours. I work from home when possible, and Lily comes with me to any meetings. Victoria nodded slowly. Done. Over the next week, Ethan worked. Not in an office. Not in a lab. From his cabin, with Lily doing homework at the kitchen table while he analyzed satellite telemetry on a borrowed laptop. The laptop was high-spec, provided by Victoria's company. Encrypted connection. Direct access to their secure servers. The kind of setup he'd had 7 years ago. Before he'd walked away, Victoria's engineers sent data every 6 hours. Raw telemetry, diagnostic reports, system logs. He sent back analysis in careful, precise language. The problem was exactly what he'd suspected: timing crystal degradation from radiation exposure in the South Atlantic anomaly. The Van Allen belt dipped lower there, allowing more charged particles to reach satellite altitude. The crystals weren't failing. They were experiencing temporary disruption. Single event upsets, recoverable, but causing exactly 30 seconds of timing drift each time. The solution required firmware updates to compensate for drift, implementing error correction algorithms and timing redundancy, plus additional shielding on future hardware, lead-lined housings for the crystal assemblies, better grounding, standard aerospace hardening protocols that should have been there from the start but had been value engineered out to save cost. Simple, once you knew where to look. But finding where to look, that was the hard part. That was what Victoria's entire engineering team had missed for 3 weeks. But Victoria kept calling. Not about technical issues. She asked questions. About Lily's school. About what books they were reading. About how he'd learned to be invisible. "You're very good at it," she said during one call. "Disappearing. I've been trying to find records of you, your work, everything just stops 7 years ago." That was the point. Why? Because the work I did, he stopped. Lily was listening. It didn't leave room for what mattered. And now? He watched Lily sketch machine diagrams in her notebook. Now I'm figuring out how to do both. Victoria was quiet for a moment. I rebuilt my company after my father died. Made it bigger, stronger, completely mine. I thought control meant safety. Does it? No. Her laugh was soft. It means I have 300 people depending on me, a car I couldn't start. And I humiliated the one person who actually solved my problem. You apologized. Because your 8-year-old taught me how. The satellite fix worked. Victoria's company kept the contract. 300 jobs stayed secure. She sent Ethan a check he tried to refuse until she pointed out that consulting work deserved consulting rates. Besides, she'd said, Lily deserves a college fund. She's going to be brilliant. He'd accepted the check, deposited it. Felt strange about having money that hadn't come from manual labor. But stranger still was the call that came a week later. "I have a proposal," Victoria said. "And before you say no, hear me out." He waited. "I need a chief technical officer. Someone who can actually solve problems instead of just managing them. Someone who understands systems thinking. Someone who," she paused. "Someone who listens. I'm not interested in remote work. Flexible hours. Lily can have an office next to yours. We'll stock it with engineering books and a whiteboard. You set your own schedule. You turn down any project you want. But when we have problems that need real thinking, you're the person we ask." Lily looked up from her homework. "I don't need," Ethan started. "I know. You don't need anything. But maybe the work needs you." And maybe Victoria's voice softened. "Maybe you need to stop hiding." He looked at his daughter. "What do you think?" Lily considered. "Will we still have breakfast together?" "Always." "And read at night?" "Always." She smiled. "Then you should do it. The machines need someone who listens." 3 months later, snow fell again. The same mountain valley. The same white-covered trees. But this time, Ethan drove to Victoria's estate not as a groundskeeper, not as someone trying to be invisible, but as someone who belonged. His truck was the same rust and age and that persistent check engine light he kept meaning to fix. But what he carried in his head was different. Purpose, direction, the sense that maybe hiding wasn't the same as healing. Lily had her own office, as promised. Not a cubicle, not a corner. A real office with her name on a brass plate outside the door. Whiteboard, covered in equations she'd learned from library books, calculus and physics, and mechanical engineering principles. Engineering manuals stacked beside children's novels, because she was still 8 and still loved stories about talking animals. A desk that adjusted to her height, rising as she grew. Windows overlooking the mountains. A space that said, "You matter. You belong." She spent mornings at school, still quiet, still preferring books to crowds, but the teachers had stopped suggesting specialists. She was thriving in her own way. Afternoons with her father, solving problems that engineers with decades of experience and multiple degrees couldn't crack. She'd look at data streams and see patterns, listen to recordings of satellite transmissions and hear anomalies. Her gift, whatever combination of her mother's mathematical mind and her father's systems thinking had created, was extraordinary. And now she had a place to use it. He worked with precision, not hiding anymore, but not seeking glory either. Just doing what he was good at, solving problems, finding elegant solutions, teaching Lily by example that intelligence wasn't about showing off, it was about making things work, about listening, about caring enough to get it right. Victoria stopped by their offices daily, sometimes with technical questions about contracts or systems, leveraging Ethan's expertise on problems her staff couldn't solve. Sometimes just to talk. About books Lily was reading, about the mountains, about what it meant to build something versus just controlling it. She'd learned, slowly and painfully, that control wasn't the same as connection. That walls built to keep out hurt also kept out everything good. That power without vulnerability was just loneliness with better furniture. One afternoon, Lily looked up from a textbook. "Miss Hale, do you still drive your car?" Victoria smiled. "Every weekend. It runs perfectly now." "Good. It was sad before. You know what else was sad?" Victoria sat down. "Me?" Lily tilted her head. The same listening expression she used with machines. "I spent years building walls," Victoria said, "trying to control everything. But walls don't keep you safe. They just keep you alone." "Are you still sad?" the child asked. Victoria looked at Ethan, who was reviewing satellite data across the office. "No, not anymore." Lily nodded. "Because you learned to listen." Something like that. That evening, after Lily had fallen asleep in her office, something that happened more often than not, Victoria and Ethan stood by the windows, overlooking snow-covered mountains. "Thank you," Victoria said quietly. "For what?" "For not leaving when I gave you every reason to. For showing me what real strength looks like. For she stopped. For teaching me that needing help isn't weakness." He was quiet for a moment. "You know that offer you made?" "About marriage?" She tensed. "That was cruel of me." "I'm sorry. I'm not asking you to honor it," he said. "I'm just saying that if you ever want to have dinner, as people, not as CEO and consultant, just dinner." Victoria smiled. "I'd like that." Lily comes too, obviously. They stood in comfortable silence. Outside, snow fell. But inside, the cold had faded. Later, carrying sleeping Lily to his truck, Ethan paused. The vintage car sat in the garage, running, perfect, alive again. He remembered Victoria's words. "Start it, and I'll marry you." He'd started something, all right. Not just an engine. Something bigger. Something that had been broken in both of them. Lily stirred against his shoulder. "Is the car still happy, Dad?" He looked at it. Really looked. "Yeah, sweetheart. It's happy. Good." She closed her eyes again. Broken things just need someone to listen. Snow fell. Thunder was long gone, just a memory now. Winter remained, but its bite had softened. The cold was still there, it was still February in the mountains, but it felt different now. Less hostile, more like a challenge that could be met with the right preparation. And in the warmth of the garage, 3 people who'd been invisible to others, to themselves, had finally been seen.